And now, the star of the show, Jordan Rogozinski.
Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Jordan 411 Sports Show. Today we have the play-by-play voice of the Sea Bear, Joey Slattery, joining us. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm glad to be on the show and get chatting with you guys. I love the show.
Thank you. For those people that may not know you, how did you get started in sports media?
A bit of a long haul. I was when I was in school. I wanted to go to a broadcasting program in Toronto, and when I was applying for school way back when, it was the only one I did not get into. So I figured, okay, well, I gave it a shot coming out of high school, and maybe broadcasting isn't for me. So I ended up going to Laurentian University in Sudbury, Ontario. And I played lacrosse there. So one summer I decided I was going to stay there for the summer. And I ran into a girl that played on the soccer team who introduced me to a now dear friend whose name is Spencer. And Spencer was the head of it was called the Tailgate team. So like a street radio team, like those people that go out to events and things like that. Cool. And so she said, "Hey, we need a guy." And I said, "Wow, like I always wanted to get in broadcasting. I'd love to do it." So that was my foot in the door. And then my first actual, I guess, gig, we'll call it. It wasn't paid. It was an internship. At the time, it was at a sports radio station in Toronto called the Fan 590, where I was just doing, editing, things like that. And then I was lucky enough to get a position as a producer on the morning show. And from there, it was just kind of connections, but I had to go through news for a long time, right? And I really enjoyed that. I was a news reporter in Northern Ontario, and then I moved to Regina, where I was a senior reporter senior video journalist, with CTV Regina. And then I went to Edmonton, where I was a news anchor. And when I was there, I would cover the Edmonton Oilers for our website. So I would go to the Oilers games, get post-game interviews, things like that. And then I would do a write-up for our webpage, except for weekends, because I was anchoring the weekends. And from there, a job popped up in Winnipeg at CTV there for sports director. And I wasn't sure if it was the correct listing. So I emailed and just asked, is this actually a sports job? Because if it is, I'm interested. And if it not, don't worry about it. I'm enjoying my time in Edmonton. And they're like, yeah, it's a sports job. Send in your stuff as soon as you can, because the job's closing tonight. So I just sent off whatever I had. And then I ended up here. And I've been here for 6 years. I worked at CTV for, I think, 3. I've been doing sidelines for the Sea Bears the first 2 seasons. And then I turned play-by-play last year. And I still do sidelines for the national game, so the CEBL on TSN. So there's a few games. I was doing the playoffs last year for the Western Conference up until championship weekend. So but in the interim though, like I would do different things. I did play-by-play for a junior hockey team in Northern Ontario called the Cochrane Crunch. They no longer exist, unfortunately. But it was. So I used to drive after work. It was about a 45-minute drive on not the best highway, not the best conditions. I lived in a very wintry part of the country, as we do here in Winnipeg. So I drive there, drive back, and often my then girlfriend, now wife, would come with me. I'd try to do as much prep during the day as I could, call the game, and I'd come back to Timmins. And so I'd find little things here and there to stay involved with sports. But yeah, it was a bit of a long haul. It wasn't always sports, that's for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned you worked at CTV Winnipeg. What's the biggest thing working at CTV like that goes on behind the scenes that people might not realize?
A lot. There's a lot of moving parts when it comes to news, right? So there's a whole team of reporters and anchors for different shows, and you're trying to get your content in for different deadlines. So it's really being light on your feet, because you never really know when something might fall through or you have to change directions. It's sometimes it's funny, because if you watch a newscast and you'll see a story might be a minute and 30 seconds or 2 minutes, and you think like, wow, that quick and must have been easy, but people don't realize a video journalist has to go out and get the video, set up the interviews, go get the interviews, get your what we call B-roll, which is the visuals you see over top of things, and then you got to write the story, edit the story, and then get it all ready to be produced and for everybody to see what you see on TV. A lot goes into it, and there's not a lot of resources in terms of it really falls on the reporter these days. So it makes for a very, very hectic time. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. Me and Jordan were actually lucky enough. We knew Beck McDonnell. I don't know if you know her. And
But I know who she is. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. She invited us. Actually, we got to go into the studio in downtown Winnipeg, and during a live news broadcast, we got to go in the switcher room, and we got to actually be on the side where they're doing the news. That was so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that must have been cool.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, so we kind of got to see the behind the scenes a little bit of what they do.
What was your favorite part of it?
The switcher room is very fast. Like, you got to always think ahead.
Yeah.
Of like, you got to be, okay, commercial next. Then what are we doing this? What are we doing that? And then just like how they prep the news people, like all the notes they have to do. And like you said, a little segment, it's like 5 hours of prep, right? So that was kind of cool. You don't realize, right, until you see it, right, what they actually do day to day.
For me, it was meeting Kevin O.
Oh, nice. Kevin O's a great guy.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a good guy, and seeing all the voiceovers that they do and seeing how big it is. You don't realize how big it is from the outside, but it's actually pretty big in there.
Yeah, it is. I like the Winnipeg location because it's right downtown, which I liked. A lot of times news stations are like kind of on the outskirt of the city because they used to need the space for the towers. But yeah, no, I remember it was kind of cool first time I walked in there. I'm like, it's got like brick in here. It felt kind of cool. Yeah, no, I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. It's for people that aren't in it all the time. I think that's one thing we might take for granted when you're there is like, it's just your everyday, right? So it's nice to have people come visit sometimes because it kind of brings back the spark and the charm of the whole job. So I'm glad you guys had the opportunity to do that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
What was your favorite sports moment that you covered in person?
Favorite sports moment I covered in person. The first thing that comes to mind is the first ever Sea Bears game. So the Sea Bears, when they first came to town, no one was really sure what it was going to look like, right? We knew they were going to be playing at Canada Life Center. I think a lot of us were probably thinking, are they going to be able to fill enough people here? Because the team had only been announced like a few months before the season had started, right? So I guess the team had to really get on their horse to sell tickets and market and all that stuff. And I remember myself with some of the other media people when we first got in there. First off, it looked like the NBA during morning shoot around, and I was like, "Wow, this is cool." And then they had all these towels lined up along the chairs, right, the seats for fans. And so when we got in there, when people started coming in, we started hearing the numbers. It was like 5,000, 6,000. It was like, wow, that's a lot of people. And there's the star of the team, and the biggest name of the team was a local guy named Chad Posthumous. And unfortunately, we lost Chad just a little over a year ago. But he was a guy that was larger than life, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. I've never heard a single person, and I talked to a lot of people around the league and that, and I've never even heard anybody come close to saying a bad thing about him. Everybody loves him, right? You bring up his name and there's always these flood of fun memories and things like that he was, around teammates and whatnot. But in the first game, they won. And if you've never seen a CEBL basketball game, it doesn't end like a normal basketball game. They have what is called target time. So in target time, what happens is once a whistle is blown after the 4-minute mark of the fourth quarter, they turn the clock off. So there's no clock. And what they do is they take the leading score at the time and they add 9 points. So if it was, say, 100 to 90 was the score at the time, well, the target score becomes 109. So you have to hit that. There's always a winning basket. Someone has to reach the score, right? Kind of like playing 21 or something. You got to hit the number. Yeah. And it came down to the wire. And the ball went into Chad Posthumous, and he scored the winning basket for the first ever win in Sea Bears history. And I remember the crowd going nuts and just thinking like, oh, this is cool, right? And I was fortunate enough to do the post-game interview, the walk-off interview, as they call it, because I was doing sidelines for the live broadcast. And I remember I didn't know they were going to do this, but they put the interview on the Jumbotron, like on the big screen at Canada Life Center, right? So you can hear the fans' reactions. And then, him giving credit to the crowd and the crowd responding, that was a memorable moment for me. And because it was such a historic moment for basketball in this province and in the country, really, right? I mean, Winnipeg's Sea Bears have been, rippling across the country as, one of the coolest sporting events in the country. So, we didn't know that at the time, but, looking back on it now, so that would probably be my number one, and we really missed him last year, not having him around. There was a true void with that team. But then, of course, I've been to 2 Grey Cups. I got to cover the Bombers win. I got to cover the Bombers lose. Obviously, it was way more fun when the Bombers won because there's, you're more of a rush. You're on the field. You're trying to get players for interviews, and you've got your deadline. And then the second year was still fun. They lost to the Riders, but the cool part about that was Andrew Harris had won. And at the time, he'd won 3 straight Grey Cups himself, right, after winning 2 with Winnipeg. So that was kind of cool, but it was just a different vibe because, we had to go in the visitors' locker room and, I didn't really know anybody on the team like we would know the guys on the Bombers because they see you at practice and things like that a little more often. So those are among the top. And then there's one that's not really a moment where, like, I wasn't reporting live or anything like that, but the first time I was in an NHL, like covering the NHL as a paid full-time sports guy was the Edmonton Oilers. It was the first game of the season. And I was kind of nervous, right? Because I'm in the lineup with a lot of reporters that I recognize and, I've been doing it for years and I'm the rookie. And I remember I was standing in line and just kind of keeping to myself, trying to keep focused and try to look like I belong there, and a person comes up beside me and it's kind of blurry because it was so fast. But I remember this person comes up behind me and this person was going along the line, basically saying hi to everybody, and comes up beside me and says something along the lines of, "Oh, that was quite the game, wasn't it?" And I look over and I say, "Yeah." And then I look over and it's Wayne Gretzky. Wow. And I was like, I was not expecting to walk into Wayne Gretzky at the time, right? And the moment was as quick as that, and he moved on to go talk to another reporter up the line. And then the very first interview was Connor McDavid. So it was pretty cool. It's like the first time, for my post game, I met the great one. And then I got to go in the Oilers locker room and interview, the best player since, really, at least in the Oilers history. So that was kind of cool to go, the past to the present and, a little memory that I always kind of remember. But there's also a lot of just little stories that, when I'm sitting there reflecting that you wouldn't think are stories you remember. Everybody thinks the NHL is kind of the top thing, but when you get into it, the NHL kind of gets repetitive and it's hard to kind of get storylines and things like that just because of the nature of how it's set up and the access that you have, the time you have. Where a lot of times some of the most memorable stories are with the amateur athletes, the ones that don't have the fame that, they get only few chances to tell their story and, they give you a little more insight. Like curlers are like that. I love covering curling because they're just guys like you and I, right? And they have jobs and they, some of them curl full time, but you can be someone who works at a bank or, at a mill and go to the Briar or go to the Scotties. So I always thought that was cool too.
Yeah, no, for sure. Very interesting. Yeah. Now you're the play-by-play voice of the Sea Bears now. How did that opportunity come about?
Well, initially when the Sea Bears came, like I really wanted to be involved. Like even before the Sea Bears got here, I'm a big basketball fan. I don't know if you could see, but I'm a big Boston Celtics fan. So I always love basketball, but there's not a lot of opportunities to cover it in Canada. At least there wasn't, when I first started my career. So when I was in Edmonton, I'd gone to a Stingers game and I loved it. I was just like, if I could ever be a part of this, if this grows to something that, is worthwhile, I'd love to be involved. So as soon as the team was announced, I introduced myself to whoever I had to. I reached out to people at the league and I just said, I want to be a part of this. And they were actually behind on hiring because they had gone through some staff changes. So the person that called me back, her name is Shelby. She still runs the broadcast part to this day. And, she had said, I'm kind of running behind in the sense that I'm trying to get everything intact here. So let's set up a call. And at the time, there was no one in place. So she basically said, I think you'd be a good fit for either play-by-play or sideline reporting. So like, which one do you want? So I just basically said, at the time, I whatever you can fill first, I'll take the other, right? I just wanted to be helpful. And they hired Christian O'Mell, who still does play-by-play, but for CJOB. And, and he's a great play-by-play broadcaster as well. So that was fun. So we got a great play-by-play guy at the time. We had Dave Crook, who was a former basketball coach, and he was the athletic director for the University of Winnipeg for a long time. And he does a great job as a color analyst. And then I was doing the sidelines. So that's how that came about. But then when CJOB came around, Christian had to do it for the radio. So, I said, I'd love to do the play-by-play. And they gave me a shot, and I really enjoyed it. I did one game the year before because Christian was away. And I loved it. I remember thinking like, if there's more opportunities to do this, I'd love to do that. I used to do play-by-play when I was in university for basketball, but I hadn't done it since. I mean, I'd done a hockey here and there, a couple seasons like full-time when I was in Northern Ontario. And then, if someone needed someone to step in other cities I was in, I would do hockey. And I love doing hockey play-by-play as well. But basketball was just, that was always kind of my passion. But it's the job in general though. Like I think about it often where, any opportunity to do play-by-play is so fun because you get to narrate, what's happening. You're the cherry on top essentially, right? Like every time you think of a highlight, like obviously you never overshadow the highlight, but there's always like, I think of Sidney Crosby's goal in the Olympics, right? And Chris Cuthbert saying, Sidney Crosby, the golden goal, like just those little things that add to that really bring the moment to life. And that's the part I love about play-by-play. And with basketball, there's a lot more opportunity to let the game breathe, so to speak. Like it's not as fast paced. You can have conversations with your color analysts. You can get more into like game stories of players and things like that. So I think it brings more value in that sense. Whereas hockey, the cadence and rhythm is everything because you're just kind of following the play. You're trying to stay on top of it and actively, trying to pick out the important parts to call. So it's every sport brings a different aspect, but but play-by-play has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, no. My next question is, what's something fans might not realize about calling a game on live TV?
That you're live and whatever comes out of your mouth comes out of your mouth. A lot of prep work goes into it too, right? You're doing a lot of, tracking stats, standings, player profiles in terms of, fun stories or milestones they might be around. You're trying to keep track of it in real time. You're trying to keep track of runs. You're trying to keep track of in-game storylines. You're trying to set up your color commentary as best you can for to set them up to succeed. And same with the sideline reporter, right? Throwing to them and trying to find ways to work them in because you're in live. Your producer will say, "Hey, okay, we've got we had Emily Potter, who's a a basketball legend in her own right on the women's side. She's plays for our national team. She's from Winnipeg, and so they'd say Emily's ready." And, I try to find that perfect spot where I think, all right, we're going to Emily Potter with, she's got an update on this or that. Cool. So I think that it's just the constant, you're always zoned in, always focused, right? And when you lose your focus, it could be tough to get back into it because you're trying to track so many things and you have a producer in your ear, talking as you're talking, trying to give you direction. So there's a lot of multitasking, I guess, that people probably don't realize that goes into play-by-play. And, sometimes those funny things come out that are not planned or might be a mistake and you don't even catch it because you're so zoned in on the game. So there's things like that. And the one thing I try not to do is I don't prep anything. Like I don't have lines like some announcers like to have a catchphrase or something like that. Or they'll think of, well, if this happens, I'm gonna make this call, right? If this happens, this is what I want to say. And I've never really done that. I like to try to let the moment be the moment. And sometimes you have a good thing to say, sometimes it falls flat. But at the end of the day, it's you're just trying to complement the game and not overtake it, if that makes sense. But I would say it's the multitasking of play-by-play. That's the part that people might not recognize.
I often wonder too, like how do you remember all the players' names?
Well, we have a stat or a run sheet, right? So like I have a roster sheet that I set up. I wonder if I sometimes I have one lying around. I don't think I have one, but and I actually go as far as color coding it. So I'll have like the Sea Bears in Sea Bears colors with each name. You know, one will be teal, the next one will be black, teal, black, just so it's easy to read. And then if it's like, say, Edmonton, their colors are blue and yellow, so it'll be blue, yellow. And there's like little places for notes as well, right? So their position, you know, some of their key percentages coming into the game, you know, shoot like field goal percentage or free throw percentages, things like that. But you can't depend on it, right? Like you can't be looking down at your papers. So a lot of it is the nice thing with basketball is like the same players are on a lot, whereas hockey, the tough part is the line changes, right? So you really have to know back to front because there's no real opportunity to mess up their name. Whereas in basketball, there's there might be a little bit more leniency in terms of the ball goes in the guy's hands. You could take a second, look down because he's just dribbling or whatever, and like take a second to, you know, say the name right, if you will, right?
Cool.
Whereas in hockey, it just goes on a stick and he's on a breakaway. You need to know the name like right then and there, right? So that's a different challenge for hockey as opposed to basketball. But you get in a rhythm though, I do a lot of games. I follow the league, like the sideline reporting helps as well because I'm keeping tabs on all the other teams. So, you know, more often than not, I know the team pretty well coming in, and I don't really need to depend on the numbers, which is another thing with basketball. There's no helmets. So, you know, you can kind of see people, like they're, you know, you don't have to see the number. You could see their hair or their nose or whatever, right? That just kind of gives you the tell that it's that player. So that's that comes with practice. Like for sure, when I was younger and starting out in play-by-play, doing basketball in university, you know, I remember that didn't know the names coming in because we didn't have, you know, social media like we have now. We didn't have YouTube. Like YouTube we did have it, but no one was using it like we do now, where you can get highlights of every team, right? So that was a bit of a struggle. And I think my first ever play-by-play actually was, I think I was 16 years old or 15. And I called the Little League Baseball National Championship. So the winner went off to the Little League World Series. So that was cool. And that was like the first time where I really learned a lot. But even then, right, I had so much time. But I remember that being a thing even then. It was like, I don't know who this player from British Columbia is, right? And you're kind of zoning in. But thankfully, that one was on radio. Like I didn't have any TV things to worry about. So there was less people in my ear. It was more, in fact, I think it was like the first time I heard of a webcast. I remember they told me it's going to be broadcast on the internet. And I was like, cool. I have no idea who's going to be watching. And then we'd get emails from like a aunt in Texas or whatever, which was cool. And I was like, okay, this seems like it might have legs. And here we are in a streaming world.
Yeah, it's crazy how it's evolved for sure.
What was your first oh no moment on live TV?
My first oh no moment?
Yeah.
When I was in Edmonton one time, I was anchoring a newscast, and for whatever reason, we have a teleprompter, right? So an anchor will read the words coming through the teleprompter, and it was blank. There was nothing in there. And I remember looking at my sheets, and there was no printout either because we have like a backup, like the sheets backed up. So I don't know what happened. I don't know if I accidentally deleted it or just didn't load properly, or I could not tell you. But that was the first time that I was not prepared for that moment. I never thought something like that would happen. And I remember just like my heart bounding and think, you know, even in the moment, you're like, oh my God, I'm gonna get fired for this, right? And I think I said something along the lines, I didn't know what it was. I'm like, oh, here's a story out of Ottawa, and I think the story was from New Brunswick. You know, I just had no idea what was coming up next, other than like a little title of the story that doesn't give you any context of what that story is when you're kind of in a panic. But I learned a valuable lesson there, and you know, it was a lot more detailed and in that kind of things, making sure things were there, and also just having a better general idea of stories before going to air. But that for sure is probably like my big oh no moment, where I did not know how I was going to get out of it. And you don't have a co-host. You know, it was a late night newscast. There's no weather person there. There's no one. That's just me alone in the studio. And I felt alone. Like it was, and it felt like 5 minutes. It might have only been a couple of seconds, but it felt like forever.
Yeah, no.
What advice would you give a young person that wants to get into media today?
I would say just, you know, their technology is so friendly now, and you have so many resources to do things that, you know, I didn't have, say, you know, when I would have been in university or high school. So, you know, if you've got a phone camera, or, you know, you want to start a website or a podcast, just do it. A lot of this stuff is free, and you could practice, and don't worry about being perfect. Like that comes with time. Like you have to get started to be good at what you do. So I think for people getting involved that want to be in media is just, use what you can to practice so that when an opportunity comes up, you're ready, and maybe give yourself a heads up on somebody else. Right. And also just loving it. It is a grind. Like whether you're in news media or sports media, the sports media looks more fun for sure. A lot of people, would think it's a fun job, and it really is, but it's still work, right? Like you don't just show up and, show up on TV or radio and you're good, right? A lot of preparation goes into it that people don't see, but are very important for your work to be what they want to listen to or want to watch. So it's one of those things of just, making sure that you truly love what you're doing. Like I love being in a gym. I do. Like I love going to cover practices. I love, like, I even right now on Instagram, like I do weekly university hoops reports, so I'll, before the Bisons or the Westmen play, I'll do a pregame report on the team, kind of queue up the storylines for people that want to go or are watching the game on TV. And it gives an outlet for some of these players to have a voice, right? To when they're going to try to play pro or something like that, they've got some background of how they dealt with media and things like that, and can kind of give people an idea of the character they are. So you get to know the people, not just the player. So you got to love being there. Like if you're like, you might think you're a rink rat, but when you're there every day, eventually if you're a Jets fan, let's say, I know you guys have a lot of Jets fans that watch, but are you willing every single day to drive out, to the practice facility at the end of town or downtown for the practices and be there sitting, watching guys skate in circles, waiting to interview them after, and then have to be in a rush to get it done. A lot of times when a hockey game was done, you're just like, oh, like it's like, okay, I can try to go to bed, but you're still, adrenaline's running crazy because you're working late nights is another thing, right? And if you're a general sports reporter, it could be early mornings. You could be at a golf course at 6 a.m. for a tee off time, right? And then you could be at a hockey game at 7 p.m. that went into overtime. Like I remember when I was covering the Jets when they beat the Oilers, and was it triple overtime in the playoffs during the bubble? And I went to bed at like 2:30. And I had to be on the morning show, at the time to do a recap at like 6. So I probably only got like a couple of hours sleep in that day, right? But I had worked almost 24 hours. So there's those days too, where it's a labor of love. And you if you love it, you'll enjoy it. But I think a lot of people want to go in for the wrong reasons. They want to be famous, or they, want the cool job or the fun job. And then, you realize that the shine can wear off pretty quickly, but it's very, very rewarding. Like if you enjoy what you're doing, I can't wait for basketball season to start up again. Right. Yeah. I can't wait for the games this weekend at the U Sports level. Like, I love talking basketball. I love covering basketball. I love doing play-by-play and just sports in general, man. Like I still love hockey. I still love football. I love curling. The Scotty start on Friday. I'm jacked up for that. Right. So you got to have a love for it and realize where the love lies. Like for me, it's in the stories. Like every athlete, every team has a story. And I love telling those stories or hearing those stories and, bringing that emotion to the game. That's what draws me more than the X's and O's. Right. Like, with basketball, I'm watching X's and O's, but what really gets me is like when a player I know is down and they just broke out because of some adversity and they had the game of their life that, gave the team their first title or something like that. Those are the stories that ring true more than whatever, they ran a great pick and roll and, found easy baskets under the hoop. Like, yeah, it's part of the game, but it's like, why, what's the drive for these players to excel and be the best at what they do?
Yeah. If you weren't covering sports at all, what do you think you would be doing?
If I wasn't covering sports, well, I took communications and public relations in school, and I do some public relations consulting. So I'd probably get more into that. But I always thought I was going to be a financial advisor. My dad growing up was one. And, initially that my plan was I'm from Timmins, Ontario initially. That's my hometown. And I thought I was going to move back there and, take over his book of business and, just carry it through and, live a happy life out there. And, it would have been like probably a bit of an easier life in that sense in terms of, like it was already established business and not as fast paced as the world I'm in right now. But yeah, I don't know. I think I would have still got into something similar. Like I like meeting people a lot. I think it would have been like a sales or a service. I like people. I like dealing with people. I like learning about people. It's, so I think I'd probably be something like that, but I don't honestly, Jeremy, give it much thought because I really like what I'm doing and I have no plans on giving it up anytime soon. So, I just want to keep this going as long as possible.
Well, hey, if you like it, why quit, right?
Exactly. That's it. Like, if anything, sometimes you give yourself too much work, right? I want to try a little bit of everything. I like entertainment. I like producing podcasts. I have a podcast as well, Target Score Winnipeg, which is Sea Bears focused podcast and CEBL. But I do some freelance radio hosting. So yeah, like I love it. And so I think more often than not, it's a matter of trying to narrow it down and focus on one thing, right? Yeah. So that's the tough part for me.
Yeah. Do you have something, Jordan?
Why are you a fan of the Jordan 411 Sports Show?
Because I love how you guys get into it. I love how you guys can keep it light and have some fun. I love the passion that you bring, the knowledge that you guys bring. It's nice to see you guys bonding in this way and allowing us in as an audience to take it all in and talk about the teams and the sports that we love. And I think you guys are doing a great job with the show, with the social media aspect of it. And I'm going to keep listening and watching as much as I can. So keep up the great work.
Yeah, no, we appreciate your support. Thank you.
Always.
Yeah. And where can people find you and follow your work?
Primarily Instagram at Joey Slattery TV. I'm on Twitter, but I rarely use it. But every now and again, I'll throw out a tweet. And I think Facebook, it's the same thing. Joey Slattery TV is probably the best way to follow me. So, and then, throughout the season, that's where I put my game day reports. And during the winter season, those U Sports or U Hoops reports, as they're called. And I kind of keep everything updated there. So if I have a podcast coming out or anything like that, I try to keep people as updated as possible. And I'm always open to some basketball conversations. So, people get into the DMs and ask questions about whether it's CEBL or NBA or whatever. I always enjoy talking hoops. So you could find me there, give it a follow, and hope I can fill your hoops needs.
Yeah, no.
Well, thank you, Joey, for coming on. This was a really good conversation. Hope everybody will enjoy it. And please like and subscribe. And thank you and goodbye.
Yeah, we'll see you.
Thanks,
we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for coming on, Joey.
Thanks. Appreciate it. All the best.
Yep.